Have you ever noticed that even when the room is silent, you aren't? There is a physical vibration, a sort of static electricity running just under your skin that tells you something is about to go wrong. You might be sitting on your couch, finally done with work, but your shoulders are touching your ears, and your neck feels like it's made of iron. This isn't just stress from today. It's a physical memory. When you grow up in a home where the floorboards felt like landmines, you don't learn how to sit still. You learn how to hover. You aren't tense because you have a lot on your plate. You are tense because, for a long time, being relaxed was actually dangerous. Think about that for a second. In a chaotic house, calm was usually just the heavy, suffocating air before a storm. It was the silence before the shouting, the stillness before the glass broke. If you let yourself relax back then, you missed the warning signs. You didn't see the shift in someone's eyes or the way they set their glass down on the table. So, your body made a deal with you. It promised to never let you be fully off again, just so you'd never be caught off guard. That humming in your nerves is actually a protective shield that forgot how to dissolve. It shows up in the way you can't just watch a movie without checking your phone, or the way you feel a strange surge of guilt when you aren't being productive. Your nervous system equates being busy with being safe. If you're moving, you're a harder target. If you're scanning the room, you're prepared. You might find yourself staring at a beautiful sunset, and instead of feeling peace, you feel a tightening in your chest because your brain is asking, "What am I missing? Why is it so quiet?" This hum is the sound of a motor that has been idling at maximum capacity for 20, 30, or 40 years. It's the physiological equivalent of a car alarm that goes off because a leaf touched the windshield. It's exhausting. It drains your battery before you've even finished your first cup of coffee. You try to explain it to people who grew up in predictable homes, and they suggest a spa day or a nap. But a nap doesn't turn off the hum. You just wake up with your fists clenched under the covers. We have to acknowledge that this vibration isn't a defect. It's a relic. It's the leftover energy of a child who had to be their own lookout, their own bodyguard, and their own weather station. You were performing a job that was too big for you, and your body is still waiting for the shift to end. As we look at this static, we have to meet it with a massive amount of compassion instead of frustration. You aren't broken for being unable to just chill. You are a finely tuned instrument that was forced to play in a war zone. And now, even in the garden, you're still listening for the drums. It is one thing to acknowledge that the humming exists, but it is another entirely to realize that the world expects you to just turn it off. When you carry a history of chaos in your bones, the advice people give you often feels like they are speaking a language you were never taught. They see a surface-level symptom, but you are living with a structural reality. This gap between their quick fix and your lived experience is where the frustration starts to boil over. People love to tell you to just take a deep breath or go for a walk, as if your nervous system is a frozen computer that just needs a quick reboot. They suggest a bubble bath, a new candle, or a weekend away, as if the weight of a decade of instability can be washed off in 20 minutes. But when your childhood was a series of unpredictable storms, your internal wiring didn't develop a reset button. It developed a survive button. For us, relaxation doesn't feel like peace. It feels like dropping our guard. It feels like leaving the front door wide open in a neighborhood where you've already been robbed 1,000 times. If you spent years scanning the tone of a parent's voice or the sound of a door closing to gauge your safety, then calm feels like a trap. It feels like the eerie quiet right before the lightning strikes. You've been conditioned to believe that the moment you stop worrying is the exact moment the disaster will happen. So when someone tells you to clear your mind, your body screams no. To clear your mind is to stop watching the horizon. To relax your muscles is to let go of the tension that, for years, was the only thing holding you together. You aren't bad at meditating. You are simply an expert at staying alive, and your body thinks meditation is a dangerous luxury. There is a profound loneliness in trying to reset when your foundation was built on shifting sand. You see others go to a yoga class and come out looking refreshed, while you come out feeling more exposed and raw than when you went in. That's because, for a survivor of chaos, silence doesn't bring clarity. It brings up everything you had to push down just to get through the day. The easy reset is a myth because it ignores the fact that your nervous system isn't malfunctioning. It is doing exactly what it was trained to do. It is staying on because off was never an option. We have to stop apologizing for the fact that a deep breath doesn't fix us. We have to stop feeling like failures because a self-care routine feels like a chore or a threat. When you've lived in a state of high intensity for so long, the transition to rest has to be slow. It isn't a flip of a switch. It's a negotiation. It's like trying to coax someone out of a bunker long after the sirens have stopped. You don't just tell them to come out because it's a sunny day. You sit by the door, you talk softly, and you wait as long as it takes for them to feel the floor is solid. The reset isn't about finding a magic trick to stop the anxiety. It's about slowly building enough internal evidence to prove that right here and right now, the storm isn't coming back. It's about recognizing that your inability to relax is actually a testament to how hard you fought to protect yourself. You aren't broken. You are just very, very well defended. And it takes more than a deep breath to convince a warrior that they are finally home. When you realize that the easy reset doesn't work, you stop blaming yourself for being broken and start looking at the structure you built to stay alive. It's not just a mood or a bad day. It's a permanent piece of internal architecture. You didn't choose to live in a state of high alert, but you did choose to survive. And that required building a vantage point where nothing could surprise you. To understand why it sounds hard to come down, we have to look at the tower you've been living in for years. Imagine living your entire life inside a watchtower. From the top, you can see every potential threat approaching from miles away. You can see the dust clouds of a coming argument, the subtle shift in the wind that signals a change in someone's mood, and the distant shadows of a crisis that hasn't even happened yet. It's exhausting to stay up there, peering through the glass until your eyes ache, but you're terrified to come down because the tower is the only thing that kept you safe when the world was chaotic. This is what childhood chaos does to the brain. It builds a permanent lookout. As Carl Jung once said, "I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become." But making that choice is incredibly difficult when your body is still convinced that the tower is the only place where you won't get hurt. You see, the watchtower isn't just a metaphor. It's the way your brain is wired. You've spent decades perfecting the art of hyper-perception. You know the exact weight of a footstep in the hallway. You know which version of fine actually means I'm furious. You've turned yourself into a human radar system. And while that kept you safe from the unpredictable storms of your youth, it has left you living in a very small, very lonely room at the top of a very tall building. Coming down from the tower feels like a betrayal of your own survival instincts. When you try to just be present, your inner lookout starts screaming that you're being negligent. It tells you that if you stop watching, something will slip through. If you stop anticipating everyone's needs, you'll be rejected. If you stop tracking the micro expressions on a friend's face, you'll be blindsided. The architecture of the watchtower is built on the belief that observation equals safety. But the truth is, while the tower protects you from being surprised by pain, it also prevents you from being reached by love. You're too high up to feel the warmth of the ground. You might find yourself in a perfectly safe relationship with a partner who is kind and consistent, yet you're still up there with your binoculars, looking for the flaw, the lie, or the inevitable exit. You aren't doing this because you're self-sabotaging. You're doing it because the tower is all you've ever known. It's your home. Stepping down those stairs feels like walking into a void. It requires you to trust that the ground won't open up beneath you, a trust you were never given the chance to develop as a child. The work of healing isn't about tearing the tower down in a day. That would be too terrifying. It's about learning that you can keep the key to the tower in your pocket, but you don't have to live in it anymore. It's about taking one step down the stairs, feeling the wood beneath your feet, and noticing that nothing collapsed. It's about realizing that while the tower served you once, the view from the ground, where you can actually touch the people you love, is worth the risk of being seen. You aren't just a sentry. You are a person who deserves to rest. As you begin to step down from that watchtower, you realize that the fear isn't just a thought in your head. It's a physical weight. You can tell yourself 1,000 times that you are safe now, that the people around you are kind, and that the storm has passed. But your mind and your body are often speaking two completely different languages. While your mind is trying to move forward, your body is still holding on to a story it hasn't finished telling. To truly find peace, We have to stop trying to debate our way out of anxiety and start listening to the physical echoes of our past. We try to talk ourselves out of our anxiety. We use logic. We use lists. We use positive thinking. And we try to rationalize why we shouldn't feel the way we do. But the nervous system doesn't speak English. It doesn't care about your spreadsheets or your affirmations. It speaks in heart rates, muscle tension, and digestive knots. It speaks in the way your breath hitches when someone speaks too loudly, or the way your hands go cold when you have to ask for what you need. You can tell your brain, "I am safe," 1,000 times. But if your body remembers a time when safety was a luxury you couldn't afford, it won't believe you. It's like trying to convince someone who has been caught in a flood that water isn't heavy. Your body has the receipts of every moment you had to be bigger, faster, or quieter than a child should ever have to be. It remembers the adrenaline that flooded your system when you heard a key turn in the lock and weren't sure which version of a person was coming through the door. It remembers the way you had to freeze, holding your breath so small that you practically disappeared, just to avoid being noticed. That freeze didn't just go away when you grew up. It got stored in your fascia, in the curve of your spine, and in the tightness of your jaw. When you feel stuck in your life today, it's often because your body is literally reenacting a moment of powerlessness from 20 years ago. This is why just relaxing feels like a physical impossibility. You aren't fighting a thought. You are fighting a biological reflex. When your heart starts racing for no apparent reason while you're standing in line at the grocery store, that's not a malfunction. That's your body's way of saying, "I'm still on duty. I'm still making sure we don't get hurt again." It's a primitive, non-verbal language of protection. We spend so much time being angry at our bodies for overreacting, but we forget that our bodies were the only ones who stayed awake to keep us safe when the world felt like it was falling apart. Healing begins when we stop trying to fix our physical sensations and start trying to understand them. It's about noticing the lump in your throat and saying, "I see you. I know you're trying to keep me from saying something that might get me in trouble." It's about feeling the tightness in your chest and acknowledging that it's just your armor, still strapped on tight because it doesn't know the war is over. Your body is a historian of your life. It carries the map of everywhere you've been, and it needs more than just logic to change its direction. It needs the slow, steady proof of physical safety, soft blankets, steady rhythms, and the permission to finally let out the breath you've been holding since you were 6 years old. Once you begin to understand the physical language of your body, you start to see your daily habits in a completely different light. You realize that the things you once thought were just personality traits, your sharp intuition, your ability to multitask under pressure, or your knack for sensing a shift in the air, are actually the sophisticated tools of a survivor. You've spent a lifetime turning your fear into a set of skills, but there is a heavy cost to being the person who sees everything before it even happens. There is a strange, quiet grief in realizing that your greatest strengths are actually trauma responses. Maybe you're the person who can read a room in 3 seconds. You walk into a party or a meeting, and without even trying, you know exactly who is unhappy, who is posturing, and who is about to lose their temper. You think you're just perceptive or a people person, but really, you're an expert at threat detection. You learned to read the air because when you were small, the air was the only warning you had. You didn't become this observant because you wanted to. You became this observant because you had to. It feels like a superpower, doesn't it? You're the one who anticipates everyone's needs before they even speak. You know when a friend is upset before they've even realized it themselves. You are the fixer, the one who can navigate any crisis with a calm, steady hand, because you've lived in a crisis for most of your formative years. But while the world rewards you for being so on top of things, nobody sees the toll it takes to be a human radar system. They see a person who is capable. You feel like a person who can never, ever stop looking over their shoulder. It's a brilliant survival strategy, but it's an exhausting way to live a life. It keeps you locked in a state of high alert, waiting for a tragedy that, hopefully, isn't coming this time. The problem with this superpower is that it doesn't have an off switch. You're scanning for threats at a birthday party. You're analyzing the micro-expressions of the grocery store clerk. You're interpreting a slightly shorter than usual text message as a sign that your entire world is about to collapse. Your brain is trying to protect you by finding the danger before it finds you. But in doing so, it robs you of the ability to just be. You are so busy predicting the future that you aren't actually living in the present. You are a master of what if and a stranger to what is. We have to learn to thank this part of ourselves without letting it drive the car. We have to look at our hyper-vigilance and say, "Thank you for keeping me safe when things were loud and scary. You did an amazing job. But I'm in a different room now. The doors are locked, the lights are on, and I don't need you to stand guard tonight." It takes an incredible amount of energy to maintain this level of awareness. It's why you feel so drained after a simple social interaction, or why you need hours of silence just to feel human again. You aren't antisocial. You're just tired of being a superhero in a world that doesn't require one anymore. You're allowed to turn the radar off. You're allowed to be the one who gets taken care of, for a change. Even when we acknowledge that our hypervigilance was a gift born of necessity, there is a lingering side effect that logic can't seem to touch. It's the feeling that the calm is a lie. When you grow up in an environment where the weather could change in a heartbeat, where a peaceful morning could turn into a chaotic night without warning, you learn to distrust stability. You start to view peace not as a destination, but as a countdown. This deep-seated expectation of the next disaster is a shadow that follows you into every room, especially the happy ones. When life was inconsistent growing up, you learned that the other shoe always drops. You didn't grow up with the luxury of happily ever after. You grew up with the reality of for now. This creates a permanent shadow in your adult life. Even when things are going well, maybe especially when things are going well, you feel a sense of impending dread. You land the dream job, you find a partner who actually listens, or you finally have a weekend with nothing to do. And instead of joy, you feel a cold knot in your stomach. You start waiting for the mistake, the layoff, the betrayal, or the argument. You are bracing for a blow that hasn't been thrown. As Carl Jung observed, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. This is exactly what happens when we live under the shadow of unpredictability. Because we were conditioned to expect chaos, we subconsciously look for it, or worse, we create it just to get the tension over with. If we don't realize that our dread is just a leftover habit from a chaotic kitchen or a volatile living room, we start to believe that we are simply unlucky or destined to be stressed. We call it gut instinct or being a realist, but it's actually just a nervous system that feels more comfortable in a crisis than it does in a sanctuary. This shadow makes it nearly impossible to enjoy the present moment. You're at a dinner party, laughing with friends, but a part of your brain is calculating how long this mood will last. You're holding someone's hand, but you're already imagining the funeral or the breakup. It is a form of emotional time travel where you are constantly living in a catastrophic future to avoid being surprised by it. You think that if you stay miserable, the bad thing won't hurt as much when it arrives. But the truth is, worrying about the rain doesn't keep you dry. It just means you're wet before the storm even starts. Healing this part of yourself means acknowledging that your doom scrolling through your own life is a defense mechanism. It's a way to feel in control of the uncontrollable. But you don't have to live in the shadow anymore. You can start to tell that voice in your head, I see you trying to protect me from being disappointed, but you're also protecting me from being happy. It's a slow process of teaching your heart that consistency is possible. It's about staying in the good moments just 5 seconds longer than feels comfortable, proving to your nervous system that the floor is still there and the sky isn't falling. You aren't cursed. You're just recovering from a world that didn't know how to be still. When we live under that shadow of unpredictability, we naturally try to use the strongest tool we have to fix it, our intellect. We analyze our past, we read the books, we learn the terminology, and we try to think ourselves into a state of peace. We believe that if we can just understand the why clearly enough, the how of healing will follow. But there is a frustrating wall we eventually hit where our brain knows we are safe, but our chest hasn't received the memo. This gap between what we know and what we feel isn't a lack of willpower. It's a biological boundary. We often feel a deep sense of shame because we can't control our reactions. You might snap at a partner over a small mess, or freeze up when someone raises their voice, and then spend the next 3 hours hating yourself for overreacting. You tell yourself, I'm an adult now, I shouldn't feel this way, or it's just the dishes, Why am I shaking? You try to use logic to shame your emotions into submission. But you have to understand, your prefrontal cortex, the logical, rational part of your brain, gets completely bypassed when your nervous system feels a ping of familiarity. Your body thinks it's 1998 again, and it's reacting with the tools it had back then. In those moments of high stress, the part of your brain that understands time and context goes offline. To your nervous system, there is no or present. There is only danger or safety. When you hear a certain tone of voice, your body doesn't see a coworker or a friend. It sees a threat. It launches an immediate chemical response to save your life. You aren't being dramatic or difficult. You are being protective. You are reacting to a ghost. And ghosts don't listen to logic. You can't debate with an adrenaline spike. You can't use a pro and con list to stop your heart from pounding. This is the most frustrating part of the journey. The realization that you cannot think your way out of a feeling problem. We try to be reasonable with our trauma, but trauma is inherently unreasonable. It is a primal imprint. Carl Jung noted that the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. Part of that acceptance is acknowledging that your rational mind is not the boss of your nervous system. You are a passenger in a vehicle that is being steered by memories you don't even fully recall. When you try to think your way out, you are essentially trying to use a map of the city to navigate a deep, dark forest. The map is correct, but it doesn't help you with the roots and the shadows right in front of you. Healing requires us to stop being smart and start being kind. Instead of asking, "Why am I like this?" we have to start saying, "I see that I'm scared right now." We have to move from the head down into the body. Logic is a great tool for understanding the world, but it's a poor tool for comforting a frightened inner child. That child doesn't need an explanation of why the chaos happened. They need to feel the physical sensation of a deep breath, a warm blanket, or a steady hand. You can't think your way to peace, but you can feel your way there. One tiny, physical moment of safety at a time. Once we stop trying to outsmart our own biology, a secondary realization usually hits us like a physical wave. We are absolutely exhausted. We've spent years wondering why we're so tired when we haven't been doing anything, not realizing that our bodies have been performing a high-wire act every single day. We've been fighting a battle that no one else can see, using every ounce of our internal fuel just to appear normal. This isn't just a lack of sleep. It's a deep, systemic depletion that comes from a switch that has been stuck in the on position for a lifetime. Living with a sensitized nervous system is like running a marathon while everyone else is taking a stroll. You are using 10 times the energy just to stay regulated, just to keep your voice level, and just to keep your thoughts from spiraling into the worst-case scenario. By 3 p.m., you're hitting a wall of fatigue that sleep can't fix. This is nervous system exhaustion. It's the result of your internal engine idling at 5,000 revolutions per minute while you're just trying to sit in a meeting or buy groceries. Your body is burning through resources because it is constantly prepared for a crash that never comes. Think about the sheer amount of electricity it takes to keep a house lit up like a stadium all night long. That is what you are doing to your internal battery. You aren't just tired. You are overextended at a cellular level. You might find that you can handle a major crisis with total precision. You're great in an emergency, but then a small change in plans or a broken dish sends you into a total meltdown. That's because your on switch has been jammed for so long that you no longer have any buffer left. You are living on the jagged edge of your capacity. It is okay to be tired. It is okay that you need more rest than people who grew up in environments that were predictable and soft. People who grew up feeling safe have a baseline that is calm and low. They can go about their day with their nervous system at a resting hum. But your baseline was set in a war zone. Your resting state is actually high alert. Carl Jung once remarked, "The shoe that fits one person pinches another. There is no recipe for living that suits all cases." You cannot compare your energy levels to people whose shoes were never filled with the stones of childhood chaos. Their recipe for a productive day doesn't account for the fact that you spent half your morning just trying to breathe through a sense of nameless dread. This exhaustion is a signal, not a failure. It is your body finally saying, "I can't keep the lights on this bright anymore." Often, when we finally start to feel safe in our adult lives, we actually get more tired. This can be terrifying. You think you're getting worse, but the opposite is true. You are finally safe enough to feel how tired you've always been. The on switch is finally flickering, trying to find the off position for the first time in decades. Healing this exhaustion requires a radical kind of permission. It means letting yourself be unproductive without the crushing weight of guilt. It means recognizing that doing nothing is actually the hardest work you've ever done, because you're teaching your body how to exist without the adrenaline. You aren't lazy, and you aren't unmotivated. You are a weary traveler who has been carrying a heavy pack for 1,000 miles, and you're finally allowed to set it down. Once we finally admit how exhausted we are, we face a new, unexpected challenge. We assume that if we stop being on, we will instantly feel peaceful. But for a nervous system raised in chaos, peace is a foreign country with a language we don't speak. In fact, true stillness often feels more like a threat than the chaos ever did. When the noise stops, our internal alarm bells start ringing because they don't recognize the silence. To heal, we have to stop aiming for a state of bliss we can't yet handle and start aiming for something much smaller, the quiet, steady feeling of neutral. Healing isn't about going from chaos to bliss. That's too big of a jump for a body that's been in survival mode for decades. If you try to force yourself into a state of total zen or deep relaxation, your nervous system will likely rebel. It will feel like you're floating in the middle of the ocean with no life jacket. This is why so many of us start a meditation practice or go on a quiet retreat, only to find ourselves feeling more anxious, more twitchy, and more wrong than before. We are trying to run before we can crawl. Healing is actually about learning how to feel neutral. Neutral is that gray area where nothing is exploding. But you aren't necessarily overflowing with joy either. It's the absence of a crisis. For a survivor of childhood chaos, neutral can feel incredibly boring or even suspicious. You might find yourself picking a fight with a partner or overcommitting to a stressful project just to feel something familiar. Carl Jung understood this pull toward the familiar, even when the familiar is painful. He noted that people will do anything, no matter how absurd, in order to avoid facing their own souls. Sometimes, that absurd thing is recreating stress because we don't know who we are without it. Learning the feeling of neutral is like recalibrating a compass that has been sitting next to a magnet for 20 years. You have to start small. It's about finding those 5 seconds where your jaw isn't clenched and simply noticing what that feels like. It's about sitting on a bench for 3 minutes without checking your emails and proving to your heart that the world didn't end while you were looking away. This requires a gentle transition. We have to move slowly, acknowledging the parts of us that are still scared of the quiet. We have to respect the watchtower, even as we start to walk down the stairs. When you are in neutral, you are in what therapists call the window of tolerance. You aren't screaming at the top of your lungs, hyper-arousal, and you aren't completely numb and checked out, hypo-arousal. You are just here. It's not flashy. It doesn't feel like a breakthrough. It feels like a long, slow exhale. It's the ability to sit in a room and realize that you don't have to do anything to earn your right to breathe. This is the foundation of everything else. You can't build a life of joy on a foundation of constant panic. You have to build it on the quiet, boring, beautiful ground of, okay. Teaching your body that a quiet afternoon is actually safe is the hardest training you will ever do. It's about staying in the stillness just a little bit longer each day. It's about realizing that nothing is happening is actually the best news you could receive. You are teaching your nerves that they don't have to be the stars of a drama anymore. They can just be the background music to a life that is finally, slowly, becoming your own. Once we begin to tolerate the quiet of the neutral state, we realize that we are standing on a threshold. For so long, your identity was defined by what you were resisting, who you were protecting, and how you were surviving. When the smoke finally clears and the noise of the nervous system begins to fade, you are left with a question that can feel both beautiful and terrifying. Who am I when I'm not in danger? The journey doesn't end with a quiet heart. It begins there. It is the start of a slow, steady walk back to the person you were meant to be before the world told you that you had to be a soldier. The journey back to a regulated state isn't a straight line. It's not a destination you reach and then never leave. There will be days when the chaos wins, when a sudden loud noise or a sharp word from a stranger sends you spiraling back into the watchtower. You'll find your heart racing for no reason, and you'll feel like you've made no progress at all. In those moments, remember that your body is just trying to look out for you. It's a loyal, if misguided, friend that hasn't quite realized the neighborhood has changed. Healing is not the absence of these moments. It is the grace you show yourself when they happen. As you navigate this return, you start to reclaim the parts of yourself that you had to tuck away for safekeeping. Maybe it's your creativity, your playfulness, or your ability to trust. These things didn't disappear. They just went into hiding. Carl Jung believed that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. For those of us who grew up in chaos, that becoming feels more like a remembering. You are remembering that you have tastes, preferences, and dreams that have nothing to do with survival. You are learning that you can make a choice based on what you want, rather than what will keep the peace. This return is slow because it has to be. If you moved any faster, your nervous system would perceive the change as another form of chaos. You are learning a new language, the language of safety. It takes time to convince a heart that has been in a constant state of emergency that the war is actually over. Every time you choose to rest when you are tired, every time you speak your truth, even when your throat feels tight, and every time you stay present in a moment of joy, you are laying a new brick in a foundation that belongs to you, not to your past. You will start to notice small victories. You'll realize you didn't overanalyze that last text message. You'll notice that your shoulders stayed down during a difficult conversation. You'll find yourself sitting in a quiet room, and instead of feeling dread, you'll feel a sense of belonging. These are the signs that your nervous system is finally exhaling. You are moving from a life of reacting to a life of responding. You are no longer just a collection of reflexes. You are a person with agency, worth, and a future that isn't dictated by the shadows of your childhood. Be patient with the versions of you that are still waiting for the storm. They aren't your enemies. They are the brave parts of you that kept you alive long enough to reach this point. You don't have to leave them behind. You just have to show them that they can finally put their heavy packs down. You are allowed to be here. You are allowed to be still. You are allowed to be happy without waiting for the other shoe to drop. The world is big, and for the first time, you don't have to watch every inch of it. You are finally home. Moving from the realization of how your nervous system was shaped into the actual practice of living differently is perhaps the most courageous step of all. It requires us to look at the future not as a repeat of the past, but as an open space we are finally allowed to occupy. To step out of the survival cycle, we must learn to inhabit our lives with a new kind of presence, one that isn't defined by what we are running from, but by the quiet strength we are moving toward. If the watchtower was your first home, then building a sanctuary is your life's work. A sanctuary isn't a place you find. It is a state of being you cultivate, brick by brick, within your own skin. It is the practice of creating an environment, both internally and externally, where your nervous system can finally lower its shield. This doesn't happen through a grand gesture or a single moment of clarity. It happens in the tiny, seemingly insignificant choices you make every day. The choice to say no to an extra commitment that would push you past your limit, the choice to walk away from a draining conversation, or the choice to stay in bed for 10 extra minutes just to feel the weight of your own body at rest. We have to understand that for a long time, self-care was a foreign concept because we were too busy with others' care. We were so focused on managing the emotions of the people around us that we forgot we had a self to care for. Building a sanctuary means reclaiming your right to have boundaries. It means realizing that a boundary isn't a wall to keep people out. It's a gate that allows you to decide who and what is healthy enough to come in. Carl Jung noted that your visions will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. But you cannot look into your heart if it is constantly racing, or if it is crowded with the expectations and the chaos of everyone else's needs. This new section of your life is about pacing. You are learning how to move at a human speed rather than an emergency speed. You might notice that when you try to slow down, a sense of panic arises, a feeling that you are being lazy or that you are falling behind. This is just the old survival mechanism trying to pull you back into the race. In those moments, building your sanctuary means leaning into the discomfort of the slow down. It means telling yourself, I am allowed to move at a pace that doesn't break me. It's about creating rituals that signal safety to your body. A specific song, a certain texture of clothing, or the ritual of making a cup of tea without checking your messages. As you build this sanctuary, you will start to realize that you are no longer a victim of your history. You are the architect of your peace. You are teaching your nervous system that the world can be a place of soft edges and predictable rhythms. This isn't just about feeling better. It's about reclaiming your humanity. You were never meant to be a machine of constant output and vigilance. You were meant to be a person who feels the stress on their face and knows, without a shadow of a doubt, that they are safe enough to enjoy it. This sanctuary is your birthright, and every quiet breath you take is a declaration of your freedom. If these words felt like a mirror to the parts of you that have been hidden for years, please consider subscribing and joining this community. We are more than just a channel. We are a space for those of us who are tired of being strong and are finally ready to be safe. Healing a nervous system that was forged in fire is a long, quiet process, and it's one we shouldn't have to do in isolation. If you found a moment of neutral while listening today, please hit the like button. It helps this message reach others who are still living in their watchtowers, wondering why they can't just relax. I'd love to hear from you in the comments. What is one physical sensation or small ritual that tells your body it's okay to let go of the hum for a moment? Whether it's the weight of a heavy blanket, the heat of a cup of coffee, or just the silence of a Sunday morning, your experience is a roadmap for someone else. Thank you for being here, for your courage to look inward, and for giving yourself the permission to heal at your own pace. Don't forget to check the links in the description for more resources on nervous system regulation and grounding practices. We'll see you in the next video. Until then, be gentle with yourself.